Everybody, my name is Doug and welcome to a little bit of everything. Today is Thursday, so we will be discussing movies and or television. Today specifically movies. And normally I'm going to try to discuss something that is freshly out into the theaters or perhaps just came out on DVD or something like that. But today I am going to discuss something I read in an article in Yahoo earlier this week. It was titled Prequel Trilogy is better than the original trilogy, and I'm here to refute that. And granted, I was 5 years old in 1977, which will give you an idea of how old I am. So Darth Vader had a huge impact on me as a child. But at the same time, I'm going to try to be objective and give you good reasons on why the original is so much better than the prequel. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people agree with me on this because there was a bunch of negative comments on that article. The reasoning he had behind the prequels being better than the original was how they resonated with specific societies, i.e., the prequel trilogies resonate better with the American society of the late 1990s, early 2000s, as opposed to how the original trilogy resonated with the late 70s, early 80s America. The problem with that is George Lucas made it clear he's not trying to do a social commentary. He's trying to tell you a story. So he wasn't trying to resonate, he was just trying to entertain. Another argument that he had was that comparing Senator/Emperor Palpatine to George W. Bush, which is an invalid argument. For one thing, George Lucas came up with these stories in the 70s, and I'm pretty sure George W. Bush has no idea what he was doing in the 70s. He's definitely not president. And another point that makes that invalid was George W. Bush gained his popularity through tragedy, whereas Palpatine gained power through chaos. And Lucas said in the commentaries, and anybody who loves history like I do has to agree, that Palpatine is based on historical figures such as Julius Caesar, Napoleon Bonaparte, Adolf Hitler, characters or figures who gained power through chaos, not popularity through tragedy. There is a huge difference in the two. I'm sorry if you cannot see that. The next argument he made was that the prequel trilogy had more nuance, the characters are more ambiguous. That really is not a point worth mentioning. I mean, simple fact is there's not one scene in any of the first 3 episodes, the prequel trilogy, that can compare to the scene in Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, where Darth Vader says, "Luke, I am your father." And there was nothing in the first 3 episodes that had that jaw-dropping experience. Like, what? You're what? You're his father? Nothing can compare to that. The only thing the prequel had going for it compared to the original trilogy is the special effects, and that can be written off as simply 32 years of technological growth in the movie making industry. So yet again, that point is invalid. Now, for the people who were 5 when they saw A Phantom Menace compared to me when I was 5 watching A New Hope, I can understand if Darth Maul was really a cool character and had a huge impact on you, except for the fact that he died at the end of the first movie. He was not there he was not the antagonist for the entire trilogy like Darth Vader was for the original trilogy. And due to the fact that he redeemed himself at the end of Episode 6 as opposed to just Darth Maul getting slashed in half by Ewan McGregor. So there's really no points that could be made for the prequel trilogy being better than the original trilogy. It's just a fact of life. I mean, I'm sorry. The only way you can really truly look at it is 50 years from now, when someone's great-great-great-grandson or whatever, sees all 6 of them in sequence in these particular films, because I imagine in 40 years from now someone's going to buy the rights and redo all of them. Hopefully they'll do them in order and do a much better job of this, of the way it's set up sequentially. But if they were to watch these 6 movies sequentially 50 years from now, where they can have no idea what kind of impact these movies had on their culture, they would have to agree that 4, 5, and 6 was much more entertaining, simply because, and these are my arguments as far as, and ones that I think a lot of people might agree with. The dialogue in 1, 2, and 3 is just so much more convoluted, as opposed to how succinct and poignant it was in episodes 4, 5, and 6. They followed the rule of keep it simple, stupid in episodes 4, 5, and 6, whereas he's trying to put too much into episodes 1, 2, and 3. So it really took away from some of the other aspects of the movie. What are you doing? What do you got? What are you doing? Quit. So anyway, what was that? Damn. I mean, and the dialogue was so much better because it was so much simpler. You were able to follow things. You weren't trying to keep so many things, follow so many threads like you were in the newer trilogy. It was so much more enjoyable because everything was in black and white. And that was one of his arguments, was that everything is so neat and clear cut in the original that the prequels didn't have that, so it added to suspense and intrigue. And I mean, this is science fiction, fantasy, adventure movies, and suspense and intrigue wasn't really necessary to make it an enjoyable watching experience. I want to take all that aside. Let's talk about the precedents that the original trilogy set, which does not necessarily mean that they were a better trilogy than the prequel. I mean, I feel like I've already stated plenty of reasons why they were better, but the things that the episodes 4, 5, and 6 did, they made it possible for 1, 2, and 3 to be made 32 years later. Episode 4, A New Hope, set the precedent of being the first summer blockbuster. Up until then, there was not really such a thing. I mean, nowadays, every April or May, we start discussing, like, what's this summer blockbuster going to be. Sometimes they'll call it and get it wrong. Sometimes they'll get it right. Sometimes it'll be something completely out of the blue. But we would not have that summer blockbuster if it weren't for Episode 4, A New Hope. The next precedent it said was it kind of defined how we saw a trilogy in cinematic terms. Because you look at it this way, Episode 4, you have a beginning and a happy ending, and that's it. If they had never made another Star Wars movie, you would have been okay with that. You would not have said, like, I want more. Except for, I just want to go back into this world, is the only reason you would have wanted more. But they had so much success, they're like, well, let's do a sequel. And George Lucas is like, well, no, sequels are not as good as the original. So, and I don't want to turn this into a Luke Skywalker and where it's a chronicled adventures of series, like the Pink Panther or Flash Gordon or Sherlock Holmes or any of that. He wanted a cycle, something that could come full circle. And since he already had a happy ending at the end of Episode 4, he had to, like, let's make it a trilogy, but let's make Episode 5 have a to-be-continued cliffhanger type scenario, and let Episode 6 bring everything back full circle. And this set a precedent. If you'll notice, The Matrix, Back to the Future, and Pirates of the Caribbean all did the same thing. They had a very successful first movie, and instead of just doing a sequel and then maybe a third one and a fourth one and an Adventures of, they had the second installment having a to-be-continued cliffhanger sequence to it, and then the third one brought everything full circle. Now, Pirates of the Caribbean has kind of nullified their participation in that by having a fourth movie, but those original 3 are the only ones that have Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom in it. So it's still, everything is coming full circle. And this, like I said, it defined the cinematic trilogy. Now, the exception to this rule, obviously, is Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. But that was written as books first, and then turned into movies years later, so that you knew it was a trilogy, and each movie had to be interconnected with the other ones. The difference between this and Star Wars, The Matrix, Back to the Future, and Pirates of the Caribbean is you could have seen just the first movie out of all of those, and then never make a sequel or a trilogy like that, and you would have been fine. The Fellowship of the Rings would have sucked without The Two Towers and Return of the King. The rest of these movies would not have done that. And I'm not trying to compare The Lord of the Rings with Star Wars. It's completely different movie genres, even though they're both fantasy. It's just different. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Each day of the week, I'm going to try to do a small, between 3 and 7 minute little opinionated blog, and each day is going to be a different topic. Thursdays will be movies and or television. Tomorrow will be random thoughts as Friday, because you don't really want to get, everybody's just going to be so happy it's Friday. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you next time.